Her son-in-law flashed a Rolex over champagne. She really outdid herself, he bragged. Margot Ellis flipped through a stapled coupon book like it was a joke because it was. One free hug, one said. Another, errand day, restrictions apply. By Monday, the title to the lake house was out of the trust and into her own name. They celebrated renovations. She filed paperwork. And when demolition day arrived, the locks had already been changed. Before we begin, may I ask where in this big, beautiful world are you listening from? It's always a quiet honor to know who's sharing this space. Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The applause had barely faded when Ronan peeled the ribbon off a dark green box with a gold crown logo stamped on the lid. "No way," he said, dragging out the syllables with mock humility. "You shouldn't have, babe." Jenna smiled as if the cameras were on. "You deserve it, for everything you do." The Rolex sparkled beneath the chandelier light of the lakeside dining room, all brushed steel and smug perfection. Ronan held it up so everyone could see. "The real birthday boy," he joked, slipping it onto his wrist. Laughter rippled around the table. Then it was Margot's turn. Avery handed her a soft rectangle, awkwardly wrapped in recycled brown paper with floral stickers sealing the edges. "From all of us," Jenna said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "We made it personal." Margot traced the edges before opening it. Inside was a booklet, the kind children make in kindergarten, folded printer paper, stapled on the side. On the cover, a glittery title in Avery's handwriting, "Your Birthday Coupon Book." She flipped the pages slowly. Each one had a message, written in blue pen and decorated with little hearts and doodles. One free hug. One coffee pick. Up. Must be within 5 miles. One errand day. Restrictions apply. Redeem for anything. Jenna beamed. "We thought, what do you give someone who already has everything? So team, effort, love, right?" Margot looked up. Her smile was polite. "That's very creative, isn't it?" Jenna glanced at Ronan, who was fiddling with his watch clasp like a man who'd just been knighted. Avery leaned close and whispered, "I wanted to give you something different." Mom added the rest. Later that evening, the lake house fell quiet. The air carried the hush of night, distant boat lights flickering over Table Rock Lake. Crickets clicked in the warm dark. Margot sat alone in the reading nook, a thin blanket across her knees, the coupon book resting in her lap. She'd turned down the thermostat. The chill suited her tonight. In the fireplace reflection, she could still see Ronan, exaggerated and showy, turning his wrist for the group. The Rolex gleamed more than he ever would. She returned her eyes to the coupon book, flipping again. One homemade dinner. One tech help session with Ronan. Family movie night you pick. On the last page, scrawled in Avery's handwriting, was a lone coupon. Redeem for anything. No hearts, no glitter, just ink and intent. Margot exhaled slowly through her nose and set the book down on the side table. She poured herself a bourbon just, half a glass and sat back, letting the drink settle in her throat like truth. She stared out across the water. Somewhere beneath the still surface lay the remains of summer's past sun-warmed laughter, grilled corn on paper plates, her husband's arm around her shoulders as fireworks bloomed overhead. Jenna had called it their legacy house in front of friends last month. "We just want to preserve what Mom and Dad built," she'd said, placing her hand on Ronan's shoulder. "Not what you built," Margot thought. "What I kept standing." She picked the coupon book back up, ran her fingers over the Redeem for Anything page. Avery had meant it as a gesture, a child's kindness, but children often carry truths the adults forgot how to hold. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jenna. "Wasn't tonight lovely? Hope you loved your book. XO." Margot didn't reply. She reached for the remote, shut off the lights. Then, in the dark, she opened her laptop and typed one sentence into an email to her attorney. Subject, Lake House. Body, need to confirm current title structure. Let's talk Monday. She hit send. Outside, a breeze whispered through the trees. Margot leaned back, the coupon book still open in her lap, her fingers resting lightly on the final page. She smiled, not warm, not cruel, just certain. And in the silence, she began planning her redemption. The lake house's dock creaked under the weight of a dozen designer sandals and boat shoes. the kind worn by people who hadn't hauled a kayak in their lives. Sunlight bounced off wine glasses and bronzed skin, laughter carrying across the water like it had a right to be there. Ronan stood center stage, hands sweeping across the cove like a magician unveiling his next act. "We're thinking a full kitchen gut," he told the couple from St. Louis, who nodded with the kind of admiration he craved. "Stone counters, double islands, probably knock down that wallopin' up the lake view." "Sounds expensive," the man said, whistling. Ronan smiled, gold watch winking in the light. "You get what you invest in, right? It's legacy." Inside, Jenna filmed another reel. "We love spending our summers here at our family's lake, house built by hand, kept in the family, and always full of love." She ended with a wink, filters softening her face into nostalgia. She did not tag Margot. From her upstairs bedroom, Margot heard the laughter rise again, followed by the pop of a champagne cork. She watched them through the gauzy curtain, their rehearsed warmth, their effortless occupation of space they didn't earn. Her fingers tightened on the teacup. Downstairs, someone turned the Bluetooth speaker louder. By the time Avery arrived that evening, the lake house smelled faintly of citronella candles and charcuterie remnants. She found Margot in the garden, kneeling among overgrown lilies, sleeves rolled to her elbows. "They talk about it like it's theirs," Avery said, brushing her hair into a ponytail. Margot kept her eyes on the dirt. "Talking is free." Avery crouched beside her. "And ownership?" Margot looked up then. "Paperwork isn't." That night, after the guests had long driven back to their condos and Jenna had posted a grateful heart selfie with Ronan in the background, Margot sat at her desk with a manila folder in front of her. She opened it to a notarized trust document dated 2016. The lake house sat in a revocable trust she and her late husband had set up intended, back then, to pass smoothly to their daughter. Time had a way of revising intentions. She picked up the phone and dialed. "Tom Bearden," came the voice on the other end, calm and crisp. "It's Margot. Do you still have access to our original trust?" "I do." "And the lake house, it's still in the revocable?" He didn't hesitate. "Yes, still under your full control." Margot nodded slowly, as if some invisible thread had finally gone taut. "I want it out. No more question marks." There was a pause. "Understood," Tom said. Before hanging up, Margot added, "Let's make sure that ladder they're climbing leads nowhere." Outside, crickets sang over the hush of lake water lapping the rocks. Later, as she turned off the lights and walked upstairs, she passed a hallway mirror. In the low light, her reflection stared back, not small, not old, just steady. She stopped at the linen closet, pulled out an old shoebox tucked behind extra towels. Inside were keys, front door, storage shed, boat launch gate. She kept the keys. She'd let them keep the illusions. Tom Bearden's office sat 3 blocks off Main Street in Branson, tucked behind an insurance agency and an old piano repair shop. It smelled faintly of cedar and caution. Margot sat opposite him in a leather chair that had cracked at the arms from decades of quiet deals and end-of-life revisions. He slid a folder toward her with practiced hands. "This," he said, tapping the top sheet, "will formally remove the property from the revocable trust and title it directly in your name." Margot picked up the pen without hesitation. Her fingers didn't shake. "No one else can touch it once this is filed?" she asked. "Correct. No automatic inheritance. No assumptions. If something happens to you, it moves exactly how you dictate." She signed in 3 places. Tom flipped to the next page. "Now we freeze the trust." Another signature. Another silence. When it was done, he closed the folder gently and met her eyes. "You sure you don't want to warn them?" Margot gave him the same calm, razor-edged smile she'd been perfecting for months. "They've made it clear how little I factor into their vision." Tom didn't argue. 2 days later, brunch at Jenna's was in full swing artisanal croissants, fresh-pressed juice, a rosemary ham quiche someone pretended not to have bought pre-made. The dining room smelled like money and lemon oil. Ronan clinked his mimosa glass for attention. "Okay, so big announcement, renovation week is officially set," he said, spreading his arms like a game show host. "First week of July. We've got demo contractors lined up, permits prepped, and I'm getting a buddy to draw up the floor plan mock-ups." Jenna beamed. "It's going to be a full transformation. Finally making it ours. Margot sipped her coffee, silent. She didn't correct the word ours. She didn't remind them that no permits had been approved. She didn't mention that she'd already paid a private title company to expedite the recordation. Ronan leaned toward her, elbow on the table. You'll love what we're planning for the kitchen. I know it's been dated forever. Open concept. Coastal farmhouse. Big resale value when Avery's older. Margot smiled over the rim of her cup. Sounds ambitious. He didn't notice the pause between her words. He never had. Later that afternoon, back at the lake house, Margot stood barefoot on the dock, eyes on the soft ripples near the edge where a turtle lifted its head briefly before disappearing. Across the cove, Connie sat in a striped lawn chair under her wide sun hat, sipping sweet tea and pretending not to watch. She called out anyway. You letting them dig their own hole? Margot didn't turn. I'm just not handing them the ladder. Connie chuckled. You always were patient. Upstairs, the attic smelled like old cedar and box glue. Dust floated in thin beams of light from the half-moon window. Avery tugged another bin toward her grandmother, setting it down with a gentle thud. Are we keeping all of these? She asked, peeling back a lid. Inside, photo albums. Layered, heavy, brittle with time. Margot sat cross-legged on the old quilt. We're curating now. Avery pulled out a snapshother as a toddler, soaked in lake water, her mother behind her, barely looking at the camera. In the background, Margot stood on the deck, arms crossed, mouth in a faint smile. Do you want to keep this one? Margot looked at it a moment too long, then shook her head. That one's already gone. They worked in silence, the kind that carries weight without words. At the bottom of the box, Avery found a set of old paint swatches labeled Kitchen 2004. She turned them over in her hand. Did you ever want to renovate? I did, Margot said, taping another photo album shut. But then I realized what needed fixing wasn't the cabinets. That night, the county clerk's system updated. Owner of record, Margot Jean Ellis. Trust status, closed. She didn't tell them. Yet. The morning air was sharp with lake mist when Margot stood at the kitchen counter, pouring coffee into a bone-white mug she'd had since the 80s. The phone buzzed beside Heron email from Tom. Subject line, draft will, per our discussion. She clicked it open and scrolled. Avery Ellis, primary beneficiary of all real estate holdings, including Table Rock property and Margot's primary residence. Jenna Myers, removed from all property-related provisions. Ronan Myers. No mention. Margot reread it once, then again, her eyes dry and clear. She tapped reply with one hand and typed, Approved. Please schedule a formal signing. Quietly. By noon, the lake house was echoing with voices that didn't belong. Ronan had decided to host what he called a pre-renovation toast for a handful of investors, friends, and real estate contacts from Springfield. Someone was mixing margaritas in the kitchen. Jenna floated from guest to guest in a white linen blouse, carefully chosen to look effortless. Hard to believe this whole place used to be just a fishing cabin, she said with a practiced laugh. We've really poured our heart into it. Upstairs, Margot sat behind the closed door of the master bedroom, the ceiling fan humming overhead. She could hear the creak of deck boards below, the tinkling of glass, the filtered playlist of 2010 Yacht Rock. She didn't go down, didn't intervene. She watched the scene unfold from her upstairs window like it was theater and they were playing parts they hadn't earned. Later, when the guests had gone and the dishwasher murmured in the kitchen, Avery came upstairs holding a laptop in both hands. I needed Mom's charger. I accidentally opened a tab. Margot looked up from the old cedar trunk she was cleaning out. And? Avery flipped the screen around. Pinterest board. My legacy kitchen. Cover image. White marble island, champagne brass fixtures, floral arrangements in mason jars. Margot studied it. Jenna had captioned each photo with comments. For when we make it truly ours. Designed inspo for future Ellis family gatherings. Replace Margot's oak cabinets too dark, too heavy. Avery lowered her voice. She's planning like you're already gone. Margot's gaze didn't waver. She's been doing that for years. That evening, Connie appeared at the back screen door, holding 2 jars of homemade blackberry jam like an offering and a dare. You look like someone who just rearranged the whole deck of a cruise ship, she said, stepping inside without being asked. Margot handed her a glass of iced tea. The wills are signed. Everything's shifted. Connie raised an eyebrow. Avery? She's the only one who sees the foundation, not just the countertops. Connie smiled, slow and mean. You're finally erasing the smile off their plans. They clinked Glassestea and spite and resolve. That night, when the house had quieted and Avery was asleep downstairs, Margot sat at her desk and opened her laptop again. Her cursor hovered over an empty email draft addressed to Tom. She typed, Subject, listing prep, body. Let's get the lake house market. Ready. No MLS. Quiet sale, unlisted for now. She clicked send, then leaned back and watched the moonlight ripple across Table Rock Lake like a warning in silver. Some storms didn't announce themselves. Some arrived with quiet paperwork, and some started with a party no one realized was a farewell. Margot met the buyer on a Tuesday. The real estate agent Trim, no-nonsense woman named Lisa had, arranged the meeting at a small art cafe across from the marina. The buyer was early 40s, sharp eyes, soft voice, architect, divorced, looking for quiet. I'm not looking for a flip, she said, stirring her coffee. I want something with soul, somewhere to draw again. Breathe. Margot nodded slowly, her lips barely parting. It's held a lot of breath. Lisa interjected gently. We'd keep it off market. No signage, no online listing. Discreet. The buyer smiled. Good. The world doesn't need to know where you go to heal. Margot folded her hands on the table. Then we have an understanding. Back at the lake house, the sun cast long lattice shadows across the hardwood floor of the kitchen, the same floor Jenna wanted, replaced with something coastal and durable. Margot stood in the doorway, hand resting on the doorframe, her gaze trailing over the dark oak cabinets and chipped ceramic knobs she'd chosen with her husband decades ago. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Ronan, 12:14 p.m. Hey, we're ready to get started next week. Can we go ahead and tear out the lower cabinets? Won't be a big mess. No greeting, no question mark. She let the screen dim to black. That evening, Avery found her in the garden again, pruning the roses in silence, dusk settling like velvet over the lake. Did you see his text? Avery asked. Margot nodded once, clipping a stem with slow precision. Are you going to answer? Margot dropped the clippings into the basket. I already did. Avery crouched beside her. Does it hurt? Watching them act like it's theirs? Margot looked out over the cove. Her voice was quiet, not fragile. Less than they expected it to. The next morning, Tom called with a time. Inspection set for Friday, 10 a.m. Buyers sending someone from her firm. No flags so far. Good, Margot replied. Let's keep it clean. He paused. They still don't know? They will, she said, but not before the lock clicks. By Thursday, Ronan had begun spreading the news like gospel. Connie found Margot on her porch swing, shelling peas into a colander, sunlight on her knees and a glass of iced tea sweating beside her. He's already telling neighbors the remodel starts Monday, Connie said, settling into the rocker beside her. Swears you gave him the green light. Margot didn't flinch. He's always assumed silence means permission. Connie chuckled. You've got the calm of a sniper. Margot smiled faintly. And the aim. That night, Margot stood alone in the kitchen, overhead light off, the dim under-cabinet glow casting shadows onto the wood grain. She ran her palm slowly along the surface of the counter. It was worn smooth near the sink. Avery had once sat there, swinging her legs as they snapped beans. There were knife marks from rushed dinners, wine stains that never fully came out. Laughter pressed into the corners of the tile grout. She didn't touch the cabinets. She didn't say goodbye. She just turned off the light. And as the lake shifted quietly under a July moon, the first twist began to settle in. The lake house was already in active sale negotiations. The inspection was booked. The deal was forming, and they were celebrating renovations that would never begin. The Evite subject line read, House reveal and bark bash. Celebrate summer and our dream Reno kickoff. The image was a stock photo of a lakeside table set with mason jar cocktails and gingham napkins. The event location? The Ellis Lake House. Jenna had sent it to over 40 people, tagging Ronan in an Instagram story the same day. We've poured so much into this home, can't wait to show what's next. Legacy in the making, Pri. The video featured a boomerang of Ronan holding up a set of custom coasters. Each one was engraved in brushed wood-grain lettering. The Myers Legacy House, Est, 2025. Margot saw the post when Avery showed it to her over breakfast, sliding the phone across the table without saying a word. Margot stirred cream into her coffee, slow and steady. Do they think wood-burning something makes it true? They think announcing it makes it theirs. Margot didn't look up. Then let them announce it. That afternoon, Margot sat with Lisa and the buyer on the back deck of the house, the same one Ronan wanted to rip out for cleaner lines. Lisa laid out the revised offer paperwork. Final contingencies waived, price accepted, all inspections cleared. The buyer's ready to close in 2 weeks, Lisa said. She's offering to handle her own moving coordination, discreet, respectful. She doesn't want disruption. Margot signed the acceptance with one sharp stroke of the pen. She won't cause any. The pages fluttered as Lisa tucked them back into the folder. The deal was in motion now, and it carried the clean certainty of a current pulling away from shore. That night, Avery sat cross-legged on Margot's bed, flipping through old photo albums while Margot folded laundry beside her. Are you really not going to tell them? Avery asked. Number. Avery looked up. Not even a heads up? Margot folded a linen napkin with calm precision. That would be a gift. Avery hesitated. They're going to implode. Margot smoothed the stack of folded fabric and set it on the bench. That's between them and the rubble. 3 days later, Ronan delivered a crate to the house while Jenna sat in the car, phone in hand, tapping out invitations and caption drafts. The crate held centerpieces copper lanterns filled with dried eucalyptus, personalized name tags tied in twine, even printed menus that read, Grilled Fare, Southern Flair, Welcome to our Lake Legacy. He dropped them on the sunroom table like he owned the floorboards beneath his shoes. Margot upstairs didn't come down. Lisa texted later that evening. Buyer's move, in window confirmed. 2 weeks from Friday. We're good to go. Margot replied with a single word. Confirmed. She watched from the upstairs window as Jenna stepped out of the SUV in a white sundress and wide sunglasses, snapping selfies against the lake backdrop, turning until the light hit her hair just right. She laughed at something Ronan said, loud and empty. The air outside smelled like lavender and pretense. That night, as the moon hung low and soft above Table Rock Lake, Margot stood barefoot in the hallway, listening. Below her, Jenna's voice rose. We should post the coasters tomorrow. People love a branding moment. Ronan chuckled. Let 'em drool. Once the cabinets are in, we'll hit Zillow just for fun. Margot turned back toward her bedroom, her steps slow, deliberate. She paused at her door, fingers brushing the frame. She didn't speak. She didn't warn. She just shut the door. And somewhere across town, a buyer marked their calendar, not for a party, but for a key exchange. The Myers pulled up at 9:02 a.m., a glossy black Suburban kicking up gravel as it crunched into the lakeside driveway. A white cargo van followed close behind, ladder racks clinking overhead, contractor logos peeling on the side. Jenna stepped out first, wearing wedge sandals and a sleeveless blouse the color of egg yolk. Her hair was pinned up in a way that said both casual and curated. Ronan emerged from the driver's side, sleeves rolled, clipboard in hand, Bluetooth already in one ear. A man in boots and cargo shorts stepped from the van, holding a folded blueprint. Kitchen's back here, yeah? The contractor asked. Jenna nodded toward the house, her voice too loud for the quiet morning. Straight through. Demo crews coming tomorrow. We'll start with the cabinets. They crossed the path lined with hydrangeas blooms still full from Margot's spring pruning. Jenna reached for the front door, still mid-conversation with her Instagram story followers, phone angled perfectly to catch her project reveal moment. She turned the knob. It didn't move. Ronan stepped in behind her, puzzled. He jiggled the handle, knocked once, then twice. He bent down, noticing something taped just beneath the knocker. A white paper notice in bold black type. Private sale pending. No access authorized by owner or agent. Trespassing will result in prosecution. For a moment, there was only the sound of wind brushing the trees and the gentle lap of water against the dock. Then Jenna screamed, "You've got to be kidding me!" Her voice cut through the morning like shattered glass. She changed the locks? She changed the locks? The contractor shifted uncomfortably. Is this still your place? Ronan was already dialing. His thumb trembled over the screen. I told her we were starting this week. She never said anything. She never said no. Inside, no one answered. The windows were closed, curtains drawn. The house sat in complete, deaf, deliberate silence. This is insane! Jenna shrieked, pacing now. She's sabotaging her own daughter, her only daughter! Across the cove, a screen door creaked. Connie stepped out onto her porch in a powder blue housecoat, a glass of iced tea in one hand, a fly swatter tucked under her arm like a sidearm. She sipped once, loudly. Jenna noticed. Are you watching this? Are you enjoying this? Connie shrugged. Didn't say I wasn't. Ronan's voice rose. I swear, she's lost it. This is elder abuse in reverse. I'm calling a lawyer. Connie smirked. Try calling a locksmith. Won't change the deed. He froze. Jenna stormed back to the car, heels slipping in the gravel, the heat rising on her chest and neck. She slammed the passenger door and immediately began typing into her phone. Ronan stood there, still at the door, staring at the lock like it had betrayed him. From the upstairs bedroom, behind a curtain drawn just wide enough for her to see but not be seen, Margot watched the entire scene unfold. No smile, no smugness, just resolve. Then she stepped away from the window and out of the frame. And while the would-be renovators stood outside, a house they'd already claimed, the real owner made her final checklist. The next morning, the air was thick with Missouri humidity, the kind that clung to your skin before the sun even cleared the trees. Margot sat at the kitchen table, sipping her coffee in silence as Avery scrolled through her phone across from her. They're posting about it, Avery muttered. Margot didn't ask what it was. She didn't have to. Avery turned the phone around. Jenna's latest Instagram story showed a filtered photo of her tear-streaked face and a caption that read, "Please pray for clarity and peace during this painful family situation. Love always wins." Margot raised an eyebrow. Love didn't sign the deed. The doorbell rang. Avery looked up. Margot didn't move. Let them ring. Another chime. Then the knock harder, less hopeful. Margot finally stood, crossed to the door, and opened it just enough to show her silhouette in the frame. Jenna stood on the porch, eyes red, eyeliner smudged at the edges, her voice thin with panic. "We didn't know you were serious. We thought," she choked back something that didn't quite pass for a sob. "We thought it was just one of your moments. Mom," she added, "please." Ronan stood behind her, jaw set, arms crossed, looking more insulted than concerned. Margot tilted her head. "One of my moments?" Jenna's voice cracked. "We're family. You always said the house was for family." Ronan stepped forward. "Exactly. That's what we were honoring. You said it yourself, years ago." Margot stared at him with a stillness that said everything she'd withheld for decades. "I said it was for family. It is. Just not for you." Silence stretched across the porch like a drawn curtain. Then, the chime of a new email pinged on Jenna's phone. She glanced down, tapped it open. Her face drained of color. "What is it?" Ronan asked. She handed him the phone. Subject: Revocation of trust rights. Final notification. From Tom Bearden, attorney at law. Attached were PDFs. Formal, legal, final. Ronan scanned the first few lines, jaw tightening with each word. "You're making a mistake," he snapped. "You're not thinking straight." "On the contrary," Margot said, folding her arms. "This is the clearest I've been in years." He took a step forward. "We'll challenge it. You know that, right? You're not untouchable." Behind him, Jenna finally let out a small sob. "How could you do this to your own daughter?" Margot's voice was steady. "The real question is how you both thought I wouldn't." Across the cove, Connie stood on her porch again, the same iced tea glass in her hand, her sunglasses low on her nose. She called out without bothering to cup her mouth. If threats worked, they'd own more than Rolexes. Ronan turned toward her, furious. Connie raised her glass in mock salute. "Go ahead. Sue your way into someone else's deed. I'll bring popcorn." Jenna broke. "You're humiliating us." "No," Margot said. "You did that yourselves." She closed the door slowly, deliberately, not a slam, just the sound of a final line being drawn. Inside, Avery waited at the foot of the stairs, silent. Margot exhaled and set her hand on the banister. "Well," she said, voice cool and clear, "that's done." But the consequences were only beginning to arrive. The lake was still that morning, so still it mirrored the sky in high definition. Not a ripple disturbed the glassy surface, not even from the heron that stalked the shallows like it, too, knew something final was in motion. Inside Margot's inbox, the subject line blinked bold. Closing confirmation. Table Rock transfer finalized. Lisa had sent it right on time. Margot read the email once, then once more. The sale was official. The lake house was no longer hers. Not legally, but the decision? That was entirely hers and always had been. By mid-morning, Jenna's voice rang through the walls again. Margot had stepped out to water the porch ferns when the delivery car pulled up, kicking dust across the drive. A man in a navy polo stepped out, clipboard in hand, a thick envelope tucked under his arm. "Notice of vacate," he said politely. "Posted service. Mailed copy too." Margot accepted the envelope and didn't bother to open it. "You can skip the porch on the next run. This'll do." Inside the envelope, "All items must be removed within 72 hours. Sale closed. Occupancy transferred." At 11:17 a.m., Jenna's scream echoed up the stairs. "What the hell is this?" she shouted, waving the envelope like it was soaked in acid. Margot didn't answer. She just walked to the window and opened it wide, letting in the warm lake air. Downstairs, Ronan rifled through the crate of decorations they'd left in the sunroom. The coasters were gone. So were the printed menus. And in the waste bin beneath shredded tissue paper and broken ribbon lay a crumpled page from Jenna's Pinterest printout. The Myers Legacy Kitchen, dream board. Grease-stained, torn in half. One edge still smelled faintly of eucalyptus. Ronan stared at it for a long moment, then crumpled it further in his fist and tossed it back. Avery stood in the hallway, silent as ever. Later that evening, Margot walked the edge of the property with her granddaughter. The light was turning gold Missouri, summer golden, the kind of glow that softened even hard truths. They stepped carefully along the dock, past the rusted ladder and the spot where Avery used to catch bluegill with a Barbie pole. "No photos?" Avery asked gently. "No," Margot said. "The house remembers enough." She paused near the edge of the yard, where Ronan once bragged about building a fire pit. His shovel had never touched the dirt. "Does it feel like you're letting it go?" Avery asked. Margot smiled, almost. "Number. It feels like I'm freeing it." They stood in silence, breathing in the lake's calm. Then Margot said, just loud enough to settle the air, "Nothing gold-plated lasts." At the end of the dock, Connie stood waiting, hands in the pockets of her windbreaker. "You walking it one last time?" she asked. Margot nodded. "Can't walk forward if you don't know where the land ends." Connie pulled her into a brief, firm hug that smelled of bug spray and blackberry jam. "You did what most people never do." Margot leaned back. "Stayed quiet long enough to be underestimated?" "No," Connie said. "Took your name off the leash." That night, after everyone had gone and the house sat empty of all voices but its own, Margot sat at her desk and opened a folder labeled E-State Redraft. Tom had sent the new documents the week before. She opened them now. Jenna Myers. Removed from all future disbursement channels. Ronan Myers. Explicit exclusion per client directive. Primary beneficiary. Real estate. Financial holdings. Trust corpus. Avery Ellis. She clicked sign. Then again. Then once more. A thin chime rang from her speakers. Confirmation received. And with a few quiet strokes of a pen, the legacy shifted entirely. Not just the lake house, but everything. The whispers started in the salon. Branson was a small town, and even smaller when the subject was scandal tied in pearls and property. Jenna sat beneath the dryer at her usual Tuesday appointment, flipping through a copy of Southern Living, pretending not to hear what she started. She changed her will after 75? That's not right. Poor thing must be slipping. She always seemed sharp to me. Real put together. Jenna cleared her throat and folded her magazine louder than necessary. "My mother's not well," she said to no one and everyone. "She's been confused for months. We're exploring options." The room quieted. A few polite nods. One pair of eyes narrowed. By the end of the week, Tom Bearden had received a call from a legal firm in Springfield requesting information on the client's mental fitness. He didn't flinch. 2 days later, a certified response landed in Jenna's inbox with a time-stamped affidavit from Margot's longtime physician, neurocognitive assessment included. "No signs of impairment. Full capacity confirmed." Attached, A video of Margot answering memory, recall questions with perfect clarity, ending with, "My daughter and her husband are not entitled to what they feel owed. I'm not confused. I'm finished." At the Lake Cafe, Ronan's name disappeared from the chalkboard behind the counter. His brand had sponsored the weekly trivia night, and the coffee sleeves had borne the slogan, "Legacy Living." Generational wealth, personal style. Now? Gone. The website for his consulting firm had quietly removed the Our Lake Home Journey tab. His Instagram had gone dark. No stories, no hashtags, no renovation updates. Whispers followed him into the hardware store. That remodel never happened, did it? Thought the place got sold. Heard the mom iced them out. He barked at a cashier over a miscounted screw packet and left without his change. At home, Margot rearranged the spice rack. She moved rosemary to the front, even though she didn't cook much anymore. It wasn't about flavor, it was about order. Avery sat at the table, sketching something in her notebook. "They're telling people you're losing it," she said without lifting her pencil. "I know," Margot replied. "It's their last card." Avery looked up. "You'd think they'd play smarter." Margot took a seat beside her, watching the lines of a house come into shape on the page. Avery's design, all clean light and quiet dignity. "They can't inherit the consequences they dodged," Margot said, fingers folding a napkin into a triangle. "That's not how it works." Avery studied her. "They underestimated you." Margot let the silence breathe, then, "No," she said. "They expected me to act like they wouldn't." At dusk, she stepped out onto the porch with a glass of iced water and watched a boat drift slowly past the dock. Someone new, someone anonymous, someone who now called the lake home. Margot raised her glass in a toast, only she understood. Inside, her phone buzzed. A voicemail. From Jenna. She didn't play it, but the message had already been left. The state auditor arrived on a Thursday. Plain khakis and a badge clipped to his windbreaker. Polite, but practiced like someone used to walking into messes with a clipboard and leaving with a signature. Tom met him at the office with a pot of fresh coffee and a file thicker than necessary. Margot sat beside him, steady as stone, purse at her feet, hands folded like she was waiting for a weather forecast she already knew. "We've received inquiries," the auditor began, "regarding potential undue influence or incapacity relating to recent asset transfers." Tom nodded once, then slid the file across the desk. "Every document notarized, every decision medically certified, and the witness statements are signed and time-stamped." The man flipped through silently. 5 minutes, then 10, then 20. No questions. He closed the file and cleared his throat. "We'll file this as resolved. Clean. No further review." He stood. "Frankly, I've seen real trouble. This isn't that. It's just uncomfortable for the ones who weren't chosen." Margot smiled without showing teeth. "Their learning inheritance is not entitlement." By Monday, word had gotten out quietly but fully. Someone at the firm had leaked that Jenna's inquiry had prompted a full state review. But the audit came back with one word in the notes: unfounded. Jenna received a formal letter of reprimand from her attorney's board liaison for misusing professional channels for personal grievance litigation. Tom emailed a copy to Margot with a subject line that simply read, "Thought you'd like this." She printed it, taped it inside her pantry door, behind the baking soda. That weekend, Connie hosted a small dinner on her patio under string lights and citronella torches. The folding table was covered in mismatched linens, a roasted chicken at the center, and a pitcher of peach tea sweating onto a cork coaster. 6 guests, all locals. All had seen everything without needing to ask. "To Margot," Connie said, lifting her glass. "Queen of quiet retaliation." Everyone laughed. Margot only blinked, amused. "I didn't retaliate. I redirected." "That," Connie said, "is why you wear the crown." Later that night, after the dishes had been cleared and the last guest waved from their golf cart down the gravel lane, Margot returned home to find Avery sitting cross-legged on the porch steps, scrolling her phone. "He unfollowed me," Avery said without looking up. "Ronan?" She nodded. "And Mom archived every photo of me with you." Margot lowered herself onto the step beside her. "They need someone to punish. They picked the wrong girl." Margot didn't reply. Avery pulled up her Instagram and tapped out a caption beneath a photo she'd taken weeks earlier. Margot standing in front of the lake house just before the buyer took possession, the light sharp behind her, hand on the railing, hair wind lifted. She posted it with the caption, "She didn't lose anything. She claimed it." A few likes trickled in, then a dozen, then dozens more. Inside, the voicemail from Jenna still sat untouched, unplayed, irrelevant. And beyond the screen, the silence wasn't cold, it was earned. The envelope was cream with gold trim, the kind Jenna reserved for holiday cards and influencer collaborations. The return address bore the stylized initials M+R Myers in delicate script. Inside, an invitation printed on linen cardstock. Summer brunch celebration because family always finds its way back. Sunday, 11 a.m. vertical bar, garden room vertical bar, top of the Rock Resort. Dress code, coastal smart. Margot stared at it over her coffee, the weight of it absurd against the stillness of her kitchen. She opened her planner, tore out a blank page, and wrote in neat cursive, regretfully declined. No explanations, no performance. Just truth, returned in an envelope thinner than the one it came in. The morning of the brunch, Margot sat in the backyard of her new cottage, watching Avery dig holes for a row of hydrangeas just beyond the patio. The sun was gentle, the breeze kind, the silence earned. "I got an invite too," Avery said, dropping her trowel into the dirt. "Said it was time for healing." Margot passed her a glass of lemonade. "Funny how healing only shows up after consequence." Avery grinned and wiped her hands on her jeans. "I told them I already had plans." At the resort, Ronan posted a carousel of filtered photos, a mimosa toast, a charcuterie spread, Jenna posing beneath a rose arch, grateful for family, forgiveness, and fresh starts for Sio. In every photo, Jenna's smile was slightly too tight. Her eyes didn't track the camera, they hunted for something off frame. Avery scrolled through the post, then turned her phone face down. "They're trying to spin it," she said. Margot didn't look up from her pruning. "That's the smile of someone who's hungry." At noon, Tom pulled into the driveway in his navy Buick and stepped out carrying a manila folder. "Everything's finalized," he said, handing it over. "Title gift is complete. The house is legally yours, Avery. Tax structure's clean. Transfer clause is permanent." Avery opened the folder slowly. Inside was the deed. Her name full, legal, unmissable printed where Jenna's had once assumed it would go. "Feels weird," Avery whispered. "I didn't do anything to earn it." Margot touched her shoulder. "You didn't take it. You were trusted with it." Tom tipped his hat and got back into his car. They spent the rest of the afternoon planting. Hydrangeas along the side fence, marigolds beneath the window. The spade clinked against rock a few times, but Avery just smiled and kept digging. From across the street, Connie watched from her porch, sipping a Coke and shielding her eyes from the sun. She called out as Margot waved her hat to cool off. "You two sure make a better team than the last tenants." Margot laughed. "We're not tenants. We're settlers." "Damn right," Connie said. "And settlers plant things that grow." As the sun dipped behind the ridge and the air shifted from gold to blue, Avery stepped back to admire the flower bed. "Do you think they know it's over?" she asked softly. Margot didn't answer right away. She tucked a final stake beside the tallest hydrangea and wiped her hands on her apron. "They know," she said. "They just don't believe it yet. But belief doesn't change what's already been rooted." The voicemail came in just after dawn. Margot saw the name flash on her phone. Ronan Myers then disappear into the silence of her screened-in porch, where the morning fog still curled low over the ground. She stared at the notification for a long moment, thumb hovering above the play button. Then, curiosity won over disinterest by a hair's width, and she tapped it. His voice, low and controlled, came through the speaker. "Margot, we were wrong. I was wrong. Please talk to us. Jenna's not sleeping. We didn't realize how far you were willing to—" Delete. She didn't even hear him finish the sentence. The screen returned to home. Peaceful. Blank. She set the phone face down beside her tea and watched a cardinal hop along the railing, oblivious to the drama humans stitched around things that never truly belonged to them. Avery padded out from the kitchen barefoot, wearing one of Margot's old cardigans and carrying 2 slices of toast. "Still calling?" she asked. Margot nodded. "Still hoping?" Avery sat beside her and handed over a slice. You gave enough chances, she said gently. They just didn't notice when the last one passed. Margot took a bite, chewed slowly. They were too busy polishing the silver to see I was setting the table for someone else. Later that afternoon, Tom arrived with one final folder. No ceremony. No preamble. I've filed it, he said, offering it like a baton. The trust is now irrevocable. No amendments, no reversals. It's yours to pass on, or to leave closed forever. Margot ran her fingers over the seal. And the filings? Public, Tom replied. Anyone who wants to see who's in and who's out can. County office confirmed this morning. Avery glanced at her grandmother. So, it's done? Margot folded the folder closed and stood up slowly. Number, it's sealed. That evening, Margot sat on Connie's back patio, watching the sun bruise the edge of the lake in violet and orange. Connie poured them each a glass of red, dark and dusty, like old velvet. They tried to toast you out of your own life, Connie said, lifting her glass. Now let them toast their own loss. Margot clinked her glass gently. They were never drinking to me, just to the idea of what I hadn't said no to. Connie tipped her head in approval. Still, a win's a win. Margot sipped once, then exhaled long. It wasn't about winning. No, Connie agreed. It was about worth. The message came later that night. A text. No words, just a photo. It was a shot of Jenna's old bedroom in the main Housewife stripped bare, the closet empty, the dresser drawers pulled out like open mouths, her teenage bookshelf left with only dust outlines where hardbacks once stood. No caption, just the image. Margot stared at it under the dim light of her bedside lamp. She didn't reply, but she didn't look away, either. And somewhere, tucked into a courthouse record and etched into permanence, the name Avery Ellis sat beneath the words, sole successor, irrevocable beneficiary, full rights to estate and trust. The inheritance wasn't revoked. It was rewritten. The morning passed, without interruption or text, no headlines, no surprises, just the sound of birds, the clink of mugs in the sink, and the soft rustle of life slowing down. Margot spent most of it organizing the garden shed, not out of necessity, but because order felt like freedom when no one else was trying to take it from her. By early afternoon, the sun had angled west and painted the cottage in warm lines of light. Avery called her out to the back porch, something hidden behind her back and a nervous excitement flickering in her eyes. I made you something, she said, voice low. Margot raised an eyebrow. Is it a coupon book? Avery laughed. Number, you already redeemed that. She pulled out a small leather-bound photo album, its cover a deep chestnut brown. No title, no inscription, just something quietly built. I printed them myself, Avery said, handing it over. Only us, over the years. Margot opened it carefully. There they wear snapshots in soft, imperfect light. Avery on Margot's lap with a sun hat too big for her head. Baking cookies together, flour on their noses. Reading in the hammock. Feeding ducks. More recent ones. 2 planting hydrangeas. Sitting with Connie. One of Margot, mid-laugh, eyes closed. No filters. No posing. No audience. Just real. Margot blinked slowly. The air still and full. Now that, she said, her voice quiet but firm, is something I'd keep. Avery sat beside her, leaning her head against Margot's shoulder. It's the only legacy I ever wanted. Later, Connie appeared with a loaf of still warm sourdough in a dish towel. She didn't bother knocking, just walked in through the kitchen door like people do when they've stayed long enough to stop asking. She set it on the counter, glanced at the photo album lying open beside the vase of lilies. To the woman who gave herself the last word, Connie said. Margot chuckled softly. Last word and last deed. Damn right, Connie said, popping a heel off her sandal. Let him choke on the silence. That evening, as the sun pulled its last light across Table Rock Lake, Margot sat out on the small wooden bench Avery had built by hand. The lake glowed in ribbons of copper and rose, the water lapping gently at the shore. Dragonflies hovered in slow zigzags across the reeds. Somewhere nearby, a neighbor's wind chime picked up just enough breeze to hum once then settle. This is your piece, Avery said from beside her. Margot didn't speak right away. She let the silence prove its value. Then she smiled, small and full. I earned it. And behind them, The house didn't echo with anyone's name but theirs. The frame was simple dark walnut, clean lines, nothing flashy, just solid, like the woman who chose it. Margot stood on the step stool in the living room, measuring twice, then once more for certainty. Then, with a quiet breath, she hung the framed deed on the wall above the fireplace. The gold foil seal caught the late light just right, gleaming like a quiet crown. Title holder, Avery Ellis. Gift of estate and real property irrevocable transfer. Margot stepped down and straightened the hem of her cardigan. Then she poured herself a cup of black tea, carried it to her chair, and sat down facing the window that framed the lake in wide, open brushstrokes. The view was different here. Not better, just quieter. The kind of view you didn't take for granted, because no one had handed it to you wrapped in entitlement. Across town, Ronan scrolled through real estate listings like a man searching for something he'd already lost. Their account had been flagged too many filtered posts, not enough substance. The Myers Legacy blog sat frozen, last updated 2 months ago. They'd said it was a break. Now it looked like an ending. Jenna hosted a brunch that no one posted about. The influencers didn't come. Their brand had faded like a spotlight dimmed by the absence of an audience. No legacy. No leverage, just echoes in an empty room. That afternoon, Connie stopped by, a grocery bag in hand and a fresh smirk on her face. "I figured you were due for a refill," she said, handing Margot a bottle of wine and a block of sharp cheddar. "Celebration stock." Margot smiled as she took the bag. "You just don't like drinking alone." Connie leaned against the doorframe and eyed the new frame on the wall. "Turns out that coupon book came with a clause, huh?" Margot poured 2 glasses and handed her one. Turns out it came with terms. They clinked, quiet and easy. In the kitchen, Avery held a small envelope, hands trembling just slightly as she opened it. Her voice carried softly into the room. "It's from the school." Margot looked up. Connie paused mid-sip. Avery unfolded the letter. A beat, then a bright, breathless laugh. "I got in," she said, turning the page around. "Architecture. Full ride." Connie whooped. Margot didn't speak. She just walked over, pulled Avery into her arms, and held her. When she stepped back, Margot looked her granddaughter in the eye. "Design something," she said. "That can't be stolen." That night, after the sun dipped low behind the hills and the cottage lights glowed soft through the windows, Margot stood once more beneath the framed deed. She took a sip of her tea, listened to the wind, and let the final thought settle in, quiet and complete. They unwrapped gold. I unwrapped freedom, and signed the house to someone who earned it.